That's good to hear. So flat Earth kind of had more ramifications in your life than just the shape of the Earth, I guess.
Yeah.
If it could make you think that kind, that's interesting. So how did you go from flat Earth to not wanting to drink anymore? And what other kinds of odd side effects did flat Earth have?
Yeah, a lot of flat Earth side effects for sure. Which is why I love when people say that question, oh, why does it matter? Why does it matter, Chris? And I tell them, like, it changed everything in my life. So for me, I found out about flat Earth kind of on my own because of my architectural studio. And I was taking this master class, and um, the professor was, kind of off in La La Land every day, right? She was on something, right? But she had us study basically the violet hours of the sunlight and everything like that. And we were proposed to build, some sort of residential or architectural design based on those extreme violet hours of 18 degrees of, sunlight towards the horizon. So we spent months out in, kind of the middle of West Texas, one of the flattest places ever, right? I mean, there's actually a joke out there that says you can watch your dog run away for 2 weeks because it's so flat, right?
Hmm.
Um, so I mean, they even call it kind of the ocean sky, right? Because there's just so much sky seemingly out there, no hills, no mountains, no nothing, right? So it's just kind of this place where you're like, I wonder how far that really is. But in my architectural studio, I started, measuring the temperature of the moon, measuring the temperature of the sun at these specific angles, and noticing when they were really big at the horizon, noticing when they were really small. And, I was just kind of flabbergasted with the rest of my studio mates, like, hey guys, I don't think things are adding up here, kind of thing. And I wasn't necessarily saying flat Earth, but even in 2012, with the Mayan calendar and the end of the world is coming, I started looking into, those cosmologies and realizing like, man, all these guys like had a had a flat Earth cosmology, right? And that's kind of strange. And I was already somebody who didn't watch TV or you know, 7-Eleven was a part-time job, as we coin it on the server. Was already awake to those kind of things. So this was starting to step up. Um, I was already starting to lose friends because I was like questioning sort of my reality. I was, really open about it, because that's what you're supposed to be in architectural studio. You're supposed to share your ideas, your designs, your thoughts, your aspirations. So, I was sharing this like, guys, I think the Earth is flat, kind of thing. And yeah, they're just like they couldn't handle it, right, in any way. I lost my friendships,
Hmm.
because we'd always drink. Everybody parties every weekend. It's college after all. Um, but everybody slowly started to stop hanging out with me. But I had, that's where I found out who my real friends were, because I had one friend in there who was kind of, you know, keeping an eye on me as well, doing the experiments with me and going, yeah, that's really weird. Why is the moon cold? Like, we just couldn't get past it. Um, I think it was like November 2014 comes around, and he goes, "Dude, you have to see this video my stepbrother sent me, kind of thing, about 200 proofs that the Earth is flat." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, let's watch it." And we sat there, turned off the lights, and just watched the whole thing right there. And as soon as it was done, I was like, "I'm not crazy, thank God." Like, I told all of you guys, like, of course, had that kind of ego boost from it. It's of course died down, I think, because I do think you kind of have this ego death, especially when you realize that the globe is not a globe, um, and that of course
And
that ego death is what
all your
changes
friends
everything.
leave you, and
Yeah,
suddenly they all think you're crazy. And yeah, the idea of being able to maintain an ego after that is really difficult. Yeah, I don't know exactly what the meaning of ego is, but I definitely feel like Flat Earth Awakening has a dampening effect on the ego in the sense of it humbles you,
yeah,
and it prepares you for nuance, and it gets you ready to be character assassinated, and like all of these things that most people have a bunch of defense mechanisms, I guess ego defense mechanisms built up around. And exactly, to be able to come out about some of these things, especially, a flat earther really has a ego destroying quality about destroy, is that the word? Ego, I mean,
Yeah.
it seems to be a ego. They say about having a healthy ego, you gotta have some exterior, some persona or whatever, some mask or something that you give to society. But ultimately, what we're doing here as truthers is taking off those masks, not having a persona, trying to be our authentic self. And what could be more so that than when you hold a completely contrary opinion from everyone else in humanity that's going to call you crazy for holding that opinion, yet you feel that you have so much evidence and proof and common sense and lived experience backing this thing that you're just going to stand on this firm foundation of flat earth and be the crazy guy or whatever it
Yeah.
takes. And that's kind of what I've felt. And I don't know that I had much of an ego before this, but yeah, now after being, one of the most ridiculed people on the internet for better
Oh
part of a
man.
decade.
Dude, I don't know
Yeah,
how you deal with that stuff. It's I've seen it, I've read it, I've been like, what's y'all's problem? Like, and of course it's that ego, it's all ego from them.
right, right. So there is an aspect to that. I like hearing it when other people mention it. So yeah, tell me more about that. Because like, so you lose friends, you're drinking buddies. So that maybe that has part of talking about the side effect of now you don't drink anymore because maybe you don't have those friends anymore.
Yeah.
You're gonna drink alone about the globe.
Well, then I find out too that these friends, they weren't really my friends anyway. Some of my good friends were like, "Oh yeah, they're talking crap about you about this whole flat Earth stuff, the 7-Eleven stuff, all just anything." And it's funny because
7-Eleven was a part-time job. Took me a
because
second.
yeah, on the server, we have to kind of we say Coco, right, instead of CV,
Okay,
which is funny. My initials are CV, so I'm like, man, of
right.
course this had to be the thing, right? But we use jibby jab. We definitely
Yep,
have all that lingo.
yep.
But yeah, in my sort of architectural days, I mean, at least studying my master's at the flattest place ever, I was losing friends, because of flat Earth. But at the same time, I was realizing actually much more special connections with the people that I did trust and were with me, sort of in this. They wanted to figure it out too, and even that same friend, we're still best friends today, and we still talk about, of course, flat Earth. Except he kind of went all QAnon, and I was trying to give her like, no, dude, stop. Like, like
Trump's gonna
uh,
save us. Don't even worry about the shape of the earth.
exactly. And it's just not the case. I've never believed in politics whatsoever. I mean, I was kind of fortunate too. My father was somebody who taught us the Bible every day and scripture and things like that. But he was also like, this is all an allegory, right? This is actually. He'd be like, "You're Jesus Christ," and I'd be like, "I'm Jesus Christ," kind of thing. But he taught us how to astral project. He taught us how to lower sort of and just meditate. It was kind of this Eastern philosophy slash Western philosophy. I don't know. I was honestly a kid and I just trusted my dad. But I was pretty fortunate now that I look back at it that I'm like, yeah, I definitely don't think it was this dude, right? That everybody gets really stuck on. And I'm like, well, what about the words of this book? It even says that it's all allegory and it's actually a little bit more special that way. So I've always kind of been on the fringe, right? Because I've had religious friends and I get along with, of course, everybody. Um, I bring it up, kind of when necessary or, when they ask me. So I was already kind of used to being sort of the fringe guy. Oh, everybody kind of looks at Chris. Ask Chris about 7-Eleven.
Hmm.
He'll tell you, what do you mean there's no planes? Let's look at the footage, kind of things like that. Um, which has been really great for being a professor now. So I could definitely talk about that. But yeah, the side effects of flat Earth um, was, of course, not only this ego death, but questioning what am I doing, right? It was sort of this revamping, because I think a lot of people, when they discover that it's not a globe, is they go, okay, well, what about the moon? What about the eclipse? What about all the, and you start realizing you have all these things you don't know anymore that you thought you knew, or at least were like, yeah, that's figured out, everybody knows. So it was kind of, I think that's maybe where that humbling comes in, like, I don't know, right? And I stopped saying believe. I stopped saying global. I stopped, you start to change your vocabulary, because you become that much more self-aware, right? We have this conversation even in the Discord, like, what does consciousness mean? And I'm like, well, that's a really good one, because I think it kind of just means everything. And I think we're all kind of at a general understanding that evolution is completely fake, but you could have the evolution of sort of consciousness, right? As a 5-year-old, you burn yourself, and then suddenly you've changed your consciousness. You kind of have this awakening moment where you're like, oh crap, I know what hot and cold is now. But you kind of have these all throughout your life. So I would say flat Earth was kind of that next really big step of this spiritual evolution, or whatever you want to call it, because some people hate the word evolution. Um,
And it's almost like coming out of a cult, I think.
yeah,
Because you said you're opening your mind to these new things you thought you had concrete answers for. You're reanalyzing that and realizing that actually I don't know these things that I thought I knew. I was actually acting more on assumption and appeal to authority and other logical fallacies
right.
actually, and thinking I knew things that I don't know. And then when you get back to the things that you actually can know, that's when flat Earth actually comes into full view, because it's common sense, empirical, direct realism. It's actually measurable, testable, and repeatable. Unlike the majority of things that you're taught about the globe and astrophysics and everything, these are just theories that you can't personally go to the seashore and test, or take up a hot air balloon, or airplane or whatever, a zoom camera, and use these actual practical instruments to find out for yourself if the 8-inch per mile squared exponential curvature on a globe 24,900 miles in circumference actually exists. And you can do it yourself and figure these things out. So it's a lot like, well, I mean, it truly is. It's not even like you're in a cult. You're in a cult, a
You were born
world,
into it. It's not your fault.
a
It's okay, man.
global
Yeah.
cult that everyone believes in, and you think that this is reality, and you think that it's solid science until you find out it's not. And it would be just like any other religion or cult that you were born, grown up into, indoctrinated into, and then suddenly slowly you start seeing holes in what the clergy is telling you or what the holy book says, and things like that, until you finally say, wait a minute, and then you come into your own again, rather than being fully in whatever the groupthink knowingness is
Right.
of that. You pull out into your own skepticism, and now you don't know. And it's a whole new place of agnosticism. And for me, lifelong agnosticism about most things is the truest position you can hold. Um, when you to give a knowledge claim, you really need to have a solid foundation. But flat Earth is one of those things. Surprisingly, is one of the main things you can know in this life,
Yeah.
is that the Earth is flat. It's like amazing.
And I would say most people know, or they don't want to know, right?
Right.
But there's definitely that feeling on the server. But yeah, just kind of keep it in that flat Earth side effects, because it was definitely something that that self-reflection, that ego that you have to claim knowledge about something is even kind of hard to say. But it sparked a whole interest of things, of just like you said, like I no longer have to look to other authority. I can be the authority. And I think for a lot of people, they have a really hard time going, I'm the authority? Like, are you human? Yes. Are you of stable, sound mind? Yes. Okay. So you can think for yourself. And they're like, oh, wow, I can think for myself. Um, but in that regards, I was always working a 9 to 5 life, right? I was always working to, kind of keep myself in school. And, some other people, they had their parents' wealth and, all this stuff, but I was always kind of working hard for it, working 2 jobs, or, just doing whatever I needed to do to make things work. But then I also realized, I don't have to do this either, right? Like, I don't have to waste my time for not even $10 an hour, trying to do all this extra work and prove myself and all this stuff. And I go, no, I already know how to do this. I'm going to start my own business and my own design firm. And so I did. learned how to make an LLC. It apparently wasn't that bad. But this was also learning about the fiat currency money, right? This was also learning about the straw men that are created. And then I was going, well, can a straw man be a good thing? Can I make these straw men for myself that aren't really me, so I don't get taxed, but they get taxed because they get better tax deals, and trying to basically use this system, at least at the time being, as much as I hate it, as much as I would agree that government is mind control, that there's something about small government, like that local government, that up to 5,000 people, that it's this family, right? That I've really noticed with Flat Earth too, especially on the Discord, right? Just because you have these people that were like me, sort of realizing, hey, I have the authority, and then also realizing that you had nobody else to talk to about it, right? And if you did, it might damage some sort of relationship or work, or something, right? So the Discord actually became, I think, a unique sanctuary for a lot of flat earthers, a lot of truthers, a lot of people who just want to ask questions, to come together. And it's definitely, we're at 30,000 now. Not that we're all on at the same time,
Yeah.
but there's a good 100 of us that come in every week, right? And talk with these globies. I hate to call them globies. We call them normies. There's all kinds of names out there. They call us flurfs and flat earthers, so I'm at least trying to be nice. But we try to help them, right? And we've all sort of gone through this step-by-step ego death, this step-by-step not knowing something, testing something for yourself, because that's exactly right. You can't go test the thermite, at the bottom of the building. However, you can test the footage, right? You can look at it frame by frame. So it's not like there isn't evidence of some of these things, but yeah, it's that clear crystal, hey man, let's go to the beach. You want to set it up one day? Let's go do it, right? That really helps our side, right? To say the very least. Because I was listening to the uh, Billy Billy Zig last night, and I was like, dang it, all the stuff I wanted to talk about. But it's exactly right. It's this thing that you can prove for yourself, because a lot of the times on the Discord server, we lay out this information, we lay it out very nicely, all this, here's this, here's that. We're not trying to convince you. In fact, we know that we can't even convince you. Like, we can't go into your mind and go, here, and change some things around, change that gear. No, you're not a robot. You're the only person that can actually drink that water or go through that door, as they say.
Right.
Um,
And the doorway that appears for each person is totally unique.
yeah.
There's no like one home run proof of the flat Earth that you tell to everyone, and they're like, now I get it. That is proof, because that's all it takes is one proof, and there's endless amounts of them, to the point that William Carpenter came out with 100, and I doubled it to 200. And somebody out there hopefully is trying to double mine right now, because it's easily done.
Yeah.
And you can just come out with so many of these proofs. But the one that gets it, that opens somebody's eyes, is always different from person to person. It's fascinating to hear, like, what was the thing that really got to you, that made you understand flat Earth? And it's always there's so many different ones, but it's amazing to see how we're all so unique, and what sticks in our mind, and what makes us skeptical. It's like I said, it's always that one hole that appears in the seemingly uh, um, the fabric of your reality, that seems like there isn't any hole in it, and then you're like, what is that right there? Huh, wait a minute, that just ruins this whole fabric here. I'm gonna throw it out and
Try
see what
again.
happens. Imagine, I mean, it usually takes plenty of holes until it looks like Swiss cheese before you're ready to throw it out, and it should, because you don't want to change your whole fabric of reality from one hole. But that's how it always begins. Is you have this, you think like you said, you think you know something, until you can see that one thing that doesn't seem right. Maybe I don't know this thing. And so you said about the Discord. What's the name of your Flat Earth Discord, and how long have you been running that now?
So there's definitely a hierarchy, right? From what I'm told, it started in 2015. it was part of the sort of ODD crowd. He's kind of long gone from it, and of course, it kind of just you know expanded from there. Um, but yeah, it's 24/7 Flat Earth Discord. Um, we've actually got the Flat Earth sort of subtitle. So if you did like Flat Earth or discord.gg/Flat Earth, right? So it's definitely really easy to remember. But what's cool about it is that it's 24/7. So we live stream it on YouTube 24/7, and we get a lot of people, of course, some traffic from YouTube. We live stream it on Twitter, TikTok, Rumble, a lot of different places, and it's kind of different timings for rooms and things. You can say a lot more on Rumble than you can say on YouTube. So sometimes we'll have like, video chat with everybody, ask the flat earthers some questions, kind of things like this. But it's a really good time because everybody kind of has their part. It's completely voluntary, right? Nobody's getting paid to do any of this. And it's all flat earthers. So there are some other servers that are flat earth servers, but you have these Globers that are moderators, and they do weird fishy things to each other, and it's just like we don't want any part of that. We try to minimize drama as much as possible, because let's face it, there's quite a bit even in flat earth. And even for some of these people who just came into flat earth in 2020, I'm like, hold your horses. Like you got a lot of stuff to learn. There's this thing called controlled opposition, and it's a very real thing. And if you weren't here since 2013, you don't really know about all the characters. And I even have my thoughts on Sergeant, right? How it's still like the top 10 videos, and I'm like, come on, man. Like, and I remember when your stuff came out, and I remember when Clues came out, and I was like, it was weird. Like, like you had to be there. You had to see it pop up on your feed and be like, who the hell is this guy?
It's really tough to be in my position with all this as well, because I've lived through it all and been the target of it all.
Yeah.
Yet meanwhile, I've got people of varying degrees of knowledge and experience in this field coming into it, trying to get me to play kumbaya and sing songs around the campfire with these people that I have personal histories with that they don't know about. And then I've also, like an eagle over the flat earth movement, have been watching what people do, what they say, and the effects of their actions and their words on things. And a lot of these people, they don't see that, and so for them it's just like, no, we all have to get along, everyone's equally honest and genuine, and as valuable to the community as everyone else, and all this stuff. It's like, no, there's definitely a hierarchy, just like in everything else, and there is a lot of nuance to the whole thing. And even the people that I might point fingers at, I don't. It's not black and white to me. It's all shades of gray, and I really think that people have their own personal motives, and some people are more on the side of humanity and truth and everything, and other people veer more towards their own personal interests and motives and opportunistic things like that. And that's my view of the community. It's very nuanced, and to the point that I don't really like talking about individuals anymore, because it just too bogged down in the nuance of what everyone is doing. It is shades of gray, and everyone
It starts to make you look like the bad guy too, and it's like, I'm not the bad guy here.
and everyone needs to come to it for themselves. They have to, you can't tell somebody this guy's a shill, that guy's a shill. It just ends up being this finger pointing thing that gets you nowhere. Even though I would say that in all of these movements, there are things that you could call a shill. There are paid operatives. They have been outed before in these movements. So, I mean, they exist. And to act like they don't exist is just naive. And so you have to ask that question and try and act accordingly.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's definitely something I like to come in with, just because I'm one of the, OG guys kind of there. And I like to talk at least about the history when somebody doesn't know about it, right? That, there's this thing called IFERS. Did you know that Eric took that on, and that somebody had that before him, and that somebody had that before him? And this is kind of where that started. And that if you take a look at IFERS, there's actually a lot of information there, just like this Discord. Which is another reason I kind of like the server too. Is it's a collective of everybody's information. You know, I used to not talk at all. I was the guy. I think I heard it actually in one of your videos too. I stood in the corner. I watched everybody else. You know, I didn't say a word. You know, but I knew that guy, and I knew how he picked his nose, and I knew that guy, and that he sits weird like this. You know, and so I was always extremely observant. And I'm kind of like that in the server as well, until you know something needs to be said. Um, but I don't know. I would say I'm extremely introverted in that way, but of course, getting better at it. You know, is how, you know, even working up to talking to Eric today.
I'm
Um,
a introvert as well. Have you ever taken that Jungian test? I forgot what they're
the
called.
16 personality.
That one, yeah. Is it
Yeah,
Myers-Briggs? No,
Myers-Briggs.
I think so.
I'm an
Yeah.
INFJ.
Me too. That's it.
Supposedly the rarest one. I was like,
Supposedly,
everybody's an
but
INFJ.
everyone is. My mom is too. Like,
My mom is too.
no kidding.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah.
She's ambidextrous too. She's kind of funny. She can write with both hands. It's so weird that way.
Yeah. But I mean, to a T though. Myself and my mom and Hitler apparently another
Uh,
INFJ. Yeah. Um, yeah. I guess we're deep feeling, introspective. Thinkers. We judge the world, but we don't necessarily come right out there and say what we think immediately. Yeah,
Absolutely.
we're like the ponderers. We're the ones that sit back and reflect on things before going out there and making what we've been pondering known. But
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, it's not a death sentence either. Being an introvert or what your astrological sign or your whatever these are, your I Ching, they're more just where you're at naturally, and by knowing it, it's no longer fate. You can now change what comes naturally to you if you think that some other path would be more advantageous. So, for instance, it comes natural for me to be like a perfectionist and a critical thinker, a criticizer as a Virgo. Two main things would be that you're overly critical and overly perfectionistic. Okay, so I can now. I mean, yep, that's me. But then what? You can either concede yourself to that fate for the rest of your life, or you can recognize that, again, shades of gray. Rather than being this black and white person that always wants to strive for the white, I have to be perfect, and I'm overly critical about anything that's not the lightest shade of white. No, I try to temper myself and realize that about myself, and try to not, you know, not everything needs to fit whatever my standard of perfect is. Just get it done, do whatever the best you can at the time is, release it, and move on to the next thing. Otherwise, you cripple yourself with judgment, and you never really get anything done. And that's the black part of the white perfectionist, is that when you're trying so hard to make everything white, you barely create anything. Nothing ever passes your standard, so you're frozen in your creative paralysis where nothing is good enough. And that's no way to live. That's not advanced like a perfectionist. Well, this I'm being perfect, right? This is
Yeah.
perfect. Like, no, that's not perfect. Doing that is certainly not a perfect way to be creative or to live in this world. You got to temper that so that you can actually be more productive and release things, rather than, you know, parent being paranoid about the having it has to be absolutely perfect. So
That's
I
so
find
true.
yeah, I find that finding out these things about yourself, like that you're an you're an introvert, for instance, or whatever, it get first, or I'm also HSP. I just found out I'm a highly
Oh
sensitive
yeah, they
person.
got like different like little letters afterwards now. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's very true when you read about the people that are highly sensitive. I'm definitely one of these people. You name it, I'm very sensitive to it, whether it's sound, foods, and um, people's emotions,
I was going to ask you about Wi-Fi too.
crying at
Um,
movies or music or things affect me. Oh yeah, my mom, she's a HSP as well. You can turn on Wi-Fi near her. She knows it. We got to turn it
yeah.
off. Yeah. So there's some people and other people, you tell that to other people and they're like, huh, she can tell that the Wi-Fi's on? Yeah. I mean, some people are highly sensitive to various things that other people are numb to the point that you wouldn't even believe it. Well, to me, I have really good hearing,
Mhm.
and coming back home, my parents are flabbergasted at the things that I hear, and like I gotta get them to come right next to it before they can be like, "You still don't hear that?" And they're like, "Oh, now I hear it." It's like, well, yeah, but for so it's just people have different sensitivities like that. But what I was going to say about them is when you first find out about them, it's good because you no longer feel like a weirdo or a freak or something because you're like, oh, other people are like this. This maybe is a minority thing, the INFJ or the HSP or whatever letters you want to put after yourself. What it is a familiarity that, okay, most of the people around me aren't like this, but there's a huge sector of society that identifies with me about these certain things. And so it gives you a feeling of like, okay, it's okay to be me. I'm not the weirdo. But then from there, I find that as a springboard, a jumping off point, because you don't just stay there and in your little
Yeah.
fringe group. No, okay, now you can be happy about who you naturally are, but then also recognize that you can develop beyond this thing. And that's what I'm doing now, trying to, for instance, doing the podcast, or
Yeah.
that's an extroverted thing to do somewhat, I guess, or even just coming out and having a YouTube channel, or being a flat earther publicly, that's an extroverted thing to do. The
I'd agree.
introvert in me would rather sit in the corner of the room, quiet, and not bother with all this. But there's something deep in me that knows that it's really advantageous for me to curb that natural instinct of mine and actually try to be more extroverted and you know speak my mind more so. That's the thing. INFJs, it's like they've got all these great thoughts we've been pondering them, but then we just keep them to ourselves and nobody knows, and we
Or
just sit
never
there.
execute. We're just like, oh, I wrote it down. But
Yeah.
it's been absolutely fantastic. I don't know what my life would have been without it. At the same time, I've also realized that, is it fate? Is it just this personality thing? Are all things actually supposed to happen exactly the way that they do? Is this all possibly just the illusion of choice? There's people who, honestly, they've taken it that level on the server as well, going, there is no such thing as free will. And I'm like, what? But then come to understand, like, I get what they're saying. Like, you have your personality. You would never do that thing that you think is possible. So is it really possible? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um,
I still wonder about that. I'm not 100% sure that we all have free will. I think that it's a combination of the two. In other words, there are some things that are determined, and there are some things that we have a bit of free will about. Though I'm open to the possibility that we don't, because if you look at it at like a far enough back scale, you can see how everything is literally one, because no two trees, two rocks, two humans, two anythings are exactly alike. Therefore, our classification of even calling two humans human, or two rocks rock, or two trees tree is almost arbitrary, in the sense that there are no two things that are exactly alike. So how can you give a name to them and say, okay, these two things are the same, this or that? They're not. No two things are the same. Therefore, we're involved in this one big ineffable thing, the only one true thing, which is everything, and it is acting. And we're part of that one thing. But why do we think that our part, our subjective part that isn't even really separated from
right.
the one, which is the only real thing in existence, why would we think that our little part, it has the free will to do whatever we want? We're not even really separate from the objective one thing. And now, what is that like? Once again, a dream,
Yeah.
where you could say God is the dreamer, and we are characters in the dream, and we're doing things, or we're making decisions and having conversations and having adventures and everything. So of course this is real. Of course I have agency. Of course I'm the arbiter of my own free will, and whether I go left or right, or whether I have this or that opinion or decision. Nobody's making that decision for me, are they? That's a limited perspective viewpoint. I mean, obviously, from our own subjective perspective, that's the case. But objectively speaking, you can philosophically zoom out your life to include everything in existence. And when you do that, suddenly maybe each of us subjective packets of consciousness here, thinking we're separate human entities in a physical world, maybe we're all just in the mind of God, and we think that we're a separate and individual being. But in reality, we have no more ontology, like true ontological existence, than characters in a dream do.
Yeah.
And when you die, a piece of God wakes up and realizes, oh, that was just a dream. So how Eric was I if that was the reality I was operating in? I was just being deluded into thinking that my subjective perspective is has so much power that I can do anything I want.
Yeah.
when in reality, everything I could do or would do, these words I'm speaking are in a language that was created before my birth, that was indoctrinated into me. And then
Mhm.
the fact that I would be saying these particular words at this particular time is only because of my entire life experience, which has brought me up to this exact moment where I'm talking to you and saying these exact things. And so, where's the free will in all of that, really? It's like you can see how it all trails back to a series of events that were outside of your control to begin with. You allegedly come into being somehow. That's how all that happens.
And
Is
you have no
again,
control for like the first 7 years. You don't even remember it. So what was going on then?
right? Yeah, exactly. So um, when I look at things that way, I still feel like I can be open on the whole free will versus determinism subject, and it's yet another one that I don't think I'm ever going to get to the bottom of it. And I think the most honest position is agnostic again, and just looking at both sides, realizing it, and then I'm kind of straddling the fence with it, like I said, where I feel like, well, I said in Asbestos Head, what did I say? Something like, from vacuum fluctuations in Andromeda to his daily decision between boxers and briefs, um,
Yes.
he has the free will to flip a coin on any action, opinion, or decision, but on a large enough scale, he's like a dancer choreographed beyond his capacity to comprehend because of all those things that I said about
Mhm.
how your life comes into being and all these forces outside of you that make you you, and you think this is all your free will. Well, so much of what is your free will has been determined. So I think even if we do have some bit of free will, there's also a lot of determinism, similar to the nature nurture thing, where that one never really
Mhm.
there's no there's no black and white to it. That is a shade of gray as well. Even DNA changes over time throughout your
Mhm.
life, so your nurture changes your offspring's nature. And I think it's similar with free will and determinism, that they're so well intertwined that they're like two sides of the same coin almost. And so I think maybe both is happening. Maybe both is happening at the same time.
Well,
Forrest
that's
Gump
why I
just
said
just popped into my
illusion,
head.
But yeah, I get the kind of globy arguments too then, because they're like, what do you mean I don't have free will? Look, I dropped a
Right.
pencil, didn't I? And I'm like, yeah, but you made it a point to make the decision to make that point, like based on that was your personality. You were going to say that no matter what, like so it starts to be this a bit of illusion. But then I also get deja vus, right? And even as a kid, I'd have these things where I lived out the entire freaking day, one day of this high school, and I was sitting there the next day. Just I remember a video you had too, where it was just like that, and I was like, I was freaking out that whole day. You're gonna say this, dude. You're gonna say that. I go, what the hell is going on here? Do we actually know what's going to happen? And we're playing games with ourselves, like, I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah, I've had that experience many times as well. Prophetic dreams, where you dream some aspect of your life in the future, and you didn't know it at the time, but when it comes into existence, you're like, whoa, my dream is happening right now.
Yeah.
And it is the most paradigm shattering experience. I mean, still, even when it happened now, it's like I've fitted into my paradigm now because it's happened so many times. I'm starting to understand reality has to have some kind of crystallization process, and consciousness is able to go outside of time, space, and matter to get glimpses of potential futures that we can
Yeah.
create for ourselves. And then, based on how I lived in the moment of the deja vu, I was able to change it. Like I said,
Yeah.
when I said the next sentence that my friend was going to say along with her, and she's just like, "What?" Like, yeah, yeah. And then it pulled me out of the dream reverie moment or whatever because I changed the dream in that
Yeah.
moment. And so, again, it's like determinism or free will, nature or nurture. It seems to be some combination of the two, even with when you're talking about the future. It's like
Mhm.
it's kind of there, but only if you bring it into existence.
Yeah. And the reason I say that is because there's this guy on the server. I was having this conversation with him as well, and he goes, "Chris, I don't tell a lot of people about this, but you can even ask my sister." And um, he's on the server. He'll know who he is, but um, he had a dream for 15 years apparently. Right? He was in like a coma, and he remembers it, ever so vividly. But he lived what he thought was 15 years, a completely other life, woke up and suddenly started to remember this life again, when he was 19. And those moments kind of stick out to me as well too, because it's like, what is this time thing, right? This construct that we that seems ever so objective, but at the same time could be a blink of an eye.
I liked what you said about uh, bringing it back to smaller governance at a small scale. Like the idea of anarchy, it in the sense of no governing or no governance or no rules or no rulers, it's almost ideological to the point that in practicality it doesn't happen because no matter what, people are living together in an area, in a geographical location, and you're going to have um, problems that arise. You're going to need to have standards or some set of rules, and then you're going to have punishments that people agree upon based on them. So the structure of society, the legal system, governments, and everything is kind of like the natural evolution of just people living together. You are going
Right.
to construct some kind of political structure, some kind of governing thing, no matter how hard you try not to. It'll form itself, even if you try really hard not to
Because
in a
it's
small
that human
community.
construct. It's part
Yeah,
of you.
and it's part of interpersonal relations and being able to work with one another in a group setting. You can't do it without some rules, without a hierarchy to implement those rules. People need to be compartmentalized in the sense that we were just talking about, where your role playing stats aren't the same, so you can't just think everybody's exactly the same and have them operate doing the same jobs or whatever. You can't have me trying to repair the refrigerators
Or
and you
me read the
maybe
books. Yeah.
there you go. And so you gotta divvy the work out responsibly that way, and it ends up being a society. It ends up being a system of governance without you even intending it to be so. And so the key isn't to try and not govern or not have rules or anything like that, but to keep it small and free so that it's not, and by free I mean everyone has a voice rather than representative government where everyone's gotta vote for some guy that they don't know, that now he's the voice of everyone in his geographical location and whatever he says goes for that. The bigger an area a politician claims to speak for, the
The
worse it's
worst
going to
thing,
be.
yeah.
You got to have small governance, and you have to have an overall societal governmental structure that allows for small communities to govern themselves without having like for instance in America, you got the federal and the states.
Mhm.
What is this? What is the federal government really doing that's so helpful?
Taking
Yeah,
money.
taking money,
Thanks.
parasiting off all the other states. You know, and even at the state level, that's already I would say that's about the biggest government you really need. Or if you wanted to have, federal
And even
government,
that's
the
too
the
much,
only reason,
honestly.
exactly, the only reason you should have it in existence is just as like a bureaucracy of a way to get the states to come together for something if they need to. There shouldn't it shouldn't be a all the time thing. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
and that's what they're always doing. This New World Order type stuff is they're trying to find some outside entity to get us all to come together, and then we'll all agree and fight this other thing. And that's what they need for their existence, for the legitimacy of bigger and bigger governments. They need bigger and bigger enemies to make us small communities feel
Yeah.
like scared and like we're not enough and like we need the help of bigger and bigger entities to help us out. But it's always fear based. It's almost
Mhm.
always fake. Like humanity survives regardless of all of these,
Well, then you got Project Northwoods, where you're
cataclysms.
like, is it though?
Right.
Like, oh man, like, are you serious? They were gonna do this? And then of course you have 7-Eleven. You're like, of course they would. You know. If you had a governance that was more about that, I hate as much as I hate the credit system. If we actually did good things with these technologies, they could be, honestly, in my opinion, really, really good. For instance, if you had something that was able to track like how many compliments you gave people, and if you were getting paid for that, hell yeah, there'd be a lot more compliments flying around. Dude, your shoes are nice. Like, but of course there's not, and maybe that's not the point either, too. Because I would say even spiritually, I forget what it's called, but I think there is this kind of record, if you will. There's just kind of this. I don't. I know people sort of theorize about it, but to me, I'm like, we already have this credit system too, And in fact, if we again just change those words, that we can actually start thinking about this a little bit more, and again be more self-aware.
Yeah, it could be some kind of spiritual afterlife credit that we're saving up.
Right.
Every compliment that we make, we may actually be setting up a better afterlife for ourselves based on our karma or something.
Maybe.
So we may already be getting paid by a spiritual social credit scheme that we don't even know about. That seems to be what karma is.
Right. Right.
And the interesting thing about that is like you talk about paying people for compliments or something. Well, then you'd worry about getting fake compliments because people just want money. Um,
Exactly.
and then I wonder, I scale that up to the spiritual level. If karma wasn't a thing, or if people didn't think that there was afterlife, heaven, and hell, and that retribution for all of their actions, then what would happen? Because that would be like a real dream in the sense of in your dreams, you can do whatever you want. They're amoral, and really, it's fine because the characters in your dream don't exist. It's just you sleeping there and you're having a little fantasy. But us, as the characters in a dream right now, who actually feel things and we suffer and everything, uh, it's a mind game to really. Have you ever seen Waking Life, the movie?
I don't think I have.
It's one of my favorite movies of all time. I definitely recommend
Okay.
it. It's by Richard Linklater, and there's a character in the movie who says that because the whole movie is mostly about dreams, and he says that realizing that you're a character in another person's dream, now that is self-realization. And for the movie, I didn't quite get it, but as I was thinking about it and relating it to the idea of Brahma and that we are all happening in the mind of God, and that wouldn't that be quite the act of self-realization if the truth is that you are just a character in a dream to recognize that while you're still alive in the dream, then how lucid would your life become? How lucid of a dream would you actually live knowing that you're just this character? Which is
Right.
why, again, I'm always open to that determinism thing. And it's like maybe Maybe the one bit of freedom I could have in this determined life is knowing that it's determined, unlike everyone else that's deluded with their free will. And then within this determined life, I can have the free will in my consciousness to, because that's at least that's where it is, right? Feels that way.
It definitely does,
I can bask in it, whether it's true or not, because it's my last bastion.
well, that's what gets me too. I mean, it's definitely that mind game because, like, okay, like my dad with his near-death experience, because I've been kind of getting into that soul trap stuff too. I don't like so much the word trap, but
Mm.
however, we're kind of trapped here, like, um, but he also talks about so much that when he met this loving light, right, and it's kind of the exact same experience. He saw kind of these entities on the side, and the most beautiful, wonderful light that you've ever seen. But it also said, "You're not ready to be here."
Mm.
It didn't even give him a choice. Like it was
Mm.
just like, "No, you're not ready," and shoved him back. And he immediately woke up from a coma, and things going off and whatnot. But that was something that always stuck out to me too. Is like, I don't think we do have a choice. It's just kind of like you're in the dream. Like, and that's why there's of course this illusion of choice. And it could be a nightmare, or it could actually be a dream, right? Like it doesn't have to be a nightmare, but of course it's still dualistic. There's still pain. There's still parasites. There's still, like, of course, things to learn from. Even this guy on the server would often say, like, if you had nothing to wake up from, what would be the point of being here, right? If you were never deceived by the globe, would flat Earth mean that much to you? And we're all kind of like, yeah, you're kind of right. Like it wouldn't even matter. And I've noticed that actually with my 9-year-old, because she's kind of like, why are you always talking about flat Earth? Like, why? Because to her, it's just like, just the Earth. What's funny to her is that, like, always seeing the ball and whatnot. We'll watch a movie or something, you see the universal pictures, and we both just look at each other, start cracking up. But
Well, that
what's
that proves, like you said, that it's not about the topic at hand, really. It's not about the shape of the Earth. It's about the lie. And the
exactly.
fact that you lived through the lie and that you actually had the trauma of being lied to, and then the trauma of having the cult around you lying to you, and when you just try to say, hey, actually this is what's true, you become the pariah, and suddenly, and that's more trauma. So people don't really look at flat earth as this, or the globe earth as this trauma-based mind control mechanism,
Yeah.
but it is, and it really works on some people, and especially the people who have hardened egos. People who have a large ego are going to have a really difficult time of letting these things go because they're so used to knowing or feeling that they know and having a sense of authority behind the things that they say. They're not used to the idea of radical agnosticism that I'm talking about, where you really admit that you just don't know most anything. And when you can get to that stage, like I said, it destroys your ego. And then you then what happens is what we've got going on now is you've got the debates, which aren't really debates
Yeah,
because you
debate.
it's always the same thing. Yeah,
Modern day debate. Yeah.
I don't recommend flat earthers get into something
Honestly, it just gets
that
us
could
into
be
more trouble.
classified as a debate. If you, the person you're talking to is so closed-minded that the nature of your conversation is going to take the form of a debate, then that person's not ready to have the particular conversation that you're having. People don't want to hear that, but when you look at these debates that have happened, what do you see? You see the egoistic globe earther overly confident about their theories and almost always character assassinating the flat earther. The flat earther, meanwhile, usually tends to be the quieter one, the less egoistic one, the one who's ready to say, "Oh, I don't know. Oh, I'm not sure about that." Versus and then
See,
the globe
see, you
earther will
don't know.
laugh. See, you don't know, you know. And he knows everything. And then any holes that you point into his logic, any skepticism that you throw his way, he just laughs it off because that's how egos deal with things that are outside of their paradigm, rather than humbling themselves to facts that don't fit within their box of beliefs. Nope, they stay within their box and they laugh and they throw rocks at anything outside of it like that. And that's what you see in every single debate, which is why I wouldn't get into them. All you're doing is going into a battlefield with some guy that can't stand you. He thinks you're ridiculous. He thinks you're crazy. Every word out of your mouth isn't even worth him listening to. They'll talk over you.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I just watched, for example, well, do I even? I don't even want to give names. So I just watched one of them with one of the typical Globe guys, and then a really well-spoken, nice, compassionate, flat earther kind of guy that you know he'd be a cool guy to be a friend and everything, versus this Globe guy who every interview that you see him in, he's drinking an energy drink and talking over
Yeah.
you and laughing and you can't even get a single point out. Like, I felt so bad for the guy. Like, at the end of it, he was like, "Will you let me talk? Will you let me say a
Yeah.
sentence?" I mean, he even started out saying, like, "Can we please not do the thing that you guys always do, which is talking over us and calling us names? Can we be respectful and have a respectful conversation?" And the guy said right up, he said, "Oh, well, I guess you haven't seen my channel." So, this Glober, rather than accepting the terms of a friendly debate where you actually listen to each other, let the person talk for a while before interrupting them, and then stay off the character assassinations, calling each other crazy, and just stick with the facts. And this is how he tried to set up the debate with this guy. And this is the guy's demeanor. "Oh, you haven't seen my channel. You don't see how I operate." And exactly for the next hour and a half until the guy rage quit. Well, not even rage quit. He canceled, but obviously
Mhm.
he left because he was tired of dealing with this guy that was just interrupting him, talking over him, calling him crazy, laughing at him, going back to the same point. You try to say start your new point, and he'll just
Yeah.
interrupt you and say the same point. The conversation went nowhere. It was annoying to even listen to the thing. And I've seen this happen dozens of times. Every single time I have seen a debate between these globe earthers, especially the professional globe earthers, the ones that have channels based on it, and flat earther, this is what you get. And so that's why I don't recommend entering into debate. It's setting yourself up for something that's not productive in any way. You're not going to become a globe earther again. They're not going to become a flat earther. That's not why you're having the debate. They're trying to convince you of your thing. You're trying to convince them of their thing. And neither one's going to get anywhere. And you think that, oh, well, it's for the audience. Really? Like I said,
Yeah.
that hour and a half, it was torture. I don't
Oh
know why.
gosh, the
I don't
flat
know why I
earthers are
even
like,
watched the
I
whole thing.
can't
It
do
was,
it.
I was more watching it like just feeling compassion for the flat earther or whatever, but it
Mm.
wasn't it wasn't an enjoyable listen. I didn't learn anything. It was just reinforced the fact that I would never get into these debates with these professional globe trolls. They're just and you're just promoting them, bringing people to their channel. You look at the comments, and the people in the comments section have the exact same attitude where they're not even interested in facts or science or anything. The whole globe MO at this point is making fun of the flat earthers. They have so much fun thinking that we're the dumbest people ever. And I think it may come from again, the trauma, basically, that they haven't dealt with their own trauma, and they don't want to be that crazy person so much that they're going to be the opposite. They're going to be the one calling you crazy, even though in the back of their minds, the points you're saying, that half of them have to make sense, half of them they don't have a good rebuttal for, and all these things. And that's the story of everybody that does come to flat earth, is almost everybody has that ego defense mechanism built up where you call the first flat earther you come across in your life a crazy moron, and you're quite confident and puffed up about that fact. Oh my God, I can't believe I actually met a flat earther in this day and age. But then over time, that that defense mechanism, it comes down, and then I have these interviews with people, and I find the same story over and over again where they're saying just like that. "Oh, I was that guy. I was the guy that was, you crazy flat earther, blah 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 blah."
Yeah, we
But
get that a lot too.
but if you're genuine enough and you stick with it long enough, there's going to be cracks in that armor, and you're going to come over to our side, and you're going to have to fight the exact same battle that you were on. That's what we're doing right now. Basically,
Yeah.
is we're not trying to slay globe earthers. We're trying to win them over to our side, and then we're throwing down the swords completely, because that's why I said, why debate? There's nothing to debate. Let's not fight about this. It's
Right.
not productive in any way. And the way to bring people over to our side isn't to fight. It's,
Right.
what another analogy I use is preaching to the choir. Well, it seems like, oh, you're in, they call it an echo chamber. That's the negative version of it. But what I say is, make the choir so loud and so large that everyone walking by is just listening and like, what are they singing about? I just want to go there, sit down, and listen for a while. And rather than having to have them listen to us yelling back and forth, debating with people that we don't even, they're not in our church. No, we grow our own echo chamber, and then we sing the song and make the echo so beautiful that the people walking by that have nothing to do with our choir are now so interested that they just want to see what's going on. And so I think that's the way forward, rather than trying to be aggressive butting heads and trying to take on the professional globe earthers. Like, well, Eric, you've got to take on, like it's like we've got to get our best against their best, and that's what's going to decide something. Like, truth isn't decided by having two
Right.
intellectuals on
It's not even a
opposite
debate.
sides. Yeah, you're just presenting ideas, and the ultimate arbiter of truth is always the listener. It's always the person in the audience. You're the one with the real power. The debate is just entertainment. The end result is what you think about what's been presented. And if that's the case, why share the stage with the people you would least like to share the stage with? Like, the people I want
Yeah.
to talk to are you guys. That's why I'm doing these podcasts with you guys. The flat earthers, the people that I consider my friends. Why would I want to spend this valuable time that I have to talk to some guy, whose name I'm not going to mention, that I'm thinking about, who's one of the most annoying globe earth trolls ever,
Pocket
just so that
chance.
he can
Yeah.
call me crazy, talk over me, interrupt me, character assassinate me, and then put it out on multiple channels. And then the Google algorithm, the YouTube algorithm, will move that thing to the very top. It'll be the only thing that people ever see when they type
I
in Eric
know.
Dubay. So you got to be really careful about what you're doing and who you're sharing the stage with, and
Right.
like that. So I don't think giving a platform to these people is the answer, and debating them. um, I say,
Exactly.
just let's make our own choir sing such beautiful songs. Use our own creativity to create flat earth whatever, to the point that, because there's people making stickers, there's people making tables, there's people making CAD
Coffee,
designs.
all
There's,
stuff.
everyone's using their own creativity and whatever they're good at to bring to this subject, and then you push that out into the world in various ways, and it's going to have an effect, and it's going to have a much better effect than just trying to bash your head against the wall with one adamant globe earther at a time. Break the walls down a little at a time. It's
Right.
not, nobody becomes a flat earther in a single conversation or within the conversation. So how could a debate ever end up well for either side? It's You're just presenting your side, and so you're better off presenting your side by yourself without somebody else interrupting you and sharing the stage with the exact opposite viewpoint, and trying to knock everything down that you set up instantly. So I would say we should be more confident about having our own safe spaces and being in our echo chamber, and don't worry about what they're doing over there.
Right.
And we don't even need to use that negative language. We can preach to our choir to the point that we're singing so loudly that everyone walking by wants to join our church. So we can use positive analogies. This is it's the same thing.
Well, I'm glad you say that, just because, it makes me think, because I was kind of there at the beginning of the server where it was this debate server. It was about, Globe gets this 5 minutes, Flat Earthers get 5 minutes, brawl it out, right? And it was actually called the arena, and
Mm.
that's where we had, you know Fight the Tight Shirt, McDonald tune guy, like,
Did they all come into there as
yeah,
well?
of course, because they want the content. We make them money. That's what
Yeah.
makes me absolutely
Right.
sick. I'm,
Right.
I'm like, stop giving these guys a platform. Stop giving
Yep.
all these guys that are making books about bashing flat earthers. What are you doing? So we've come to the realization too that no, we're going to be our choir, right?
Mm.
And in fact, this isn't an echo chamber. In fact, by definition, an echo chamber is the globe. You're not allowed to talk about anything outside of that. When you go to school, you get the globe. When you turn on the television, you get the globe. Everything's the globe, and that is the echo chamber, if you
Right.
will. Whereas in flat Earth, you come in here, you're going to learn about star forts. You're going to learn about the claim of geometry. You're going to learn about definitions of words. You're going to learn about logical fallacies, all these different things that are like, because we get it all the time. Oh, you guys enjoy your stupid little echo chamber, and it's like you don't even know what echo chamber is. And
Mm.
I'm here to like, I'd be glad to share it with you, but if you're going to be a dick, honestly, get the heck out of here,
Mm.
kind of thing.
That's a good
Uh,
point you make too. Is like I think people automatically think an echo chamber just means a small group with a fringe idea, and that instantly means it's an echo chamber. But what if it's a huge group with a mainstream idea, but what you got to is the what an echo chamber really is all you're hearing is your own voice echoing. You're not hearing new ideas. You're not hearing anything outside of your group. And so even though the globe echo chamber is huge and mainstream, it truly does fit the definition of an echo chamber more so than anything flat earthers are doing, because 99.9% of modern day flat earthers started as globe earthers. So we are the exact opposite of an echo chamber. We're the ones that stepped outside of the echo chamber and found out what else is out there. What are other people saying that aren't within these echoes? And then we found 150-year-old flat earth books with people saying the exact opposite and making way more sense. And so you're right, we are actually not in an echo chamber. They are. And then what are they doing? They're flipping the script and constantly telling us that that's who we are, to the point that
constant
I,
burden
I,
of
I almost agreed with it
reversals.
until you pointed that out to me. And yeah, that makes way more sense that they're the echo chamber. We're not. Just because we're a small fringe group, and that's
Right?
what you identify as an echo chamber generally. In this case, that really doesn't fit the bill. They're the echo chamber.
Exactly. But yeah, I forget who it was. One of the moderators who actually goes, no, by definition, the echo chamber is the globe side. And the way he laid it out, I was like, just mind blown. Like, of course. Like, in fact, what's so funny is that how simple flat Earth really is. That is just the Earth, right? In fact, just like we were saying, it could be objectively tested. Um, the
The,
other parts is just the mystery, for
the
sure.
model comes into play usually when you're trying to go beyond your bounds.
Right.
Usually, the model is when you try to map the celestial over the terrestrial. And
Right.
that's the thing with flat Earth is you say like, well, how can you prove the flat Earth? And most globe earthers will go like this. They're like,
Yeah.
well,
You see that
uh,
sun? You see that moon?
it's like, well, flat earthers though, this is what we do because we're actually talking about the Earth. So we look down and we measure and talk about the geology. We talk about the terrestrial. Whereas almost everything globe earthers have been taught to do when proving the shape of the Earth is to look up
Well,
to lights in the sky and things that they're doing and relate them to things down here as if it's exactly the same. And we've made the analogy before. It's like having a contractor come over to your house and and asking him what are the dimensions of the floor. And he gets out his tape measure, and rather than going to the floor and measuring from one side to the other, he goes up to the recessed lights in the ceiling and he starts measuring the little lights up there and then trying to extrapolate out from how many lights there are and how they're positioned, about how big the ground probably. It's like, dude, just measure the ground. Are you kidding me? And that's what
after
it's like
after he does all that, he's like,
with globe
we got a
earthers.
curved floor.
Yeah, turns out the floor is curved. Yeah. Well,
No, you're exactly right though, because we even say it too. We're like, are you gonna pull out a sextant and measure the lights in your room? And be like, yep, first play. No, you're just gonna measure it, man. Like, uh, No, I mean you're exactly right. We call it mind gymnastics, right? That these Globers have to take. I mean, we've gone as far because, especially in the heated debate, or if you will, of the Discord, where these Globies come in, they're constantly obfuscating, constantly like, well, I'm not going to be intellectually honest, and I'm actually going to answer this way, and we know that too. And so we will bring up like metaphors like, your wife is cheating on you, your best friend tells you, right? Wouldn't you want to know, like, would you ask your wife why did you lie, right, kind of thing? And they're like, well, my wife could be, you know, having an affair with a robot, and my friend was mistaken. And it's just like the gymnastics they put themselves through. It's like, dude, relax. Like, I'm not doing this to get you. I'm I'm trying to like help you, and you're like literally like the sheep that like keeps getting stuck in the
In
in
the
the little
fence.
trench,
Yeah.
kind of thing. I just saved you. You're trying to jump
Jump
back
back
in.
in.
Yeah. Uh, but I mean, at the same time, I wouldn't change any of it. I love helping, especially I definitely like it a lot more in real life with my students that I have a connection with, because they come back to me, years later, and they're like, they gave me a hug. I don't even remember their name, kind of thing.
So
And
many.
they're like, you helped me so much, Chris, and like that's why I do it, man. Like I want to see everybody else prosper too, because I think that's kind of the point, in my opinion. Um,
That's
and it,
the idea in Asbestos Head. I talked about the do good, have fun, and I
yeah,
also had a chapter about selfishness and selflessness, and
that was one of the
concluded.
first books I got. Yeah,
Oh, really?
actually. Mhm.
Cool. I concluded that there is no truly selfless action you can take, because every selfless action you take, you get the selfish joy of being the person who helped someone else, and that's one of the most selfish pleasures you could possibly have. And if you could, you'd want to give that to them too, which is why Asbestos Head tries to come up with this way. It's kind of like Santa Claus, where he gives presents to people and then runs away, like ding ding dashes them, so that
Mhm.
they have to then see this wonderful present, but then not know who gave it to them, and then have to wonder the rest of their life, because when you give anonymously like that, rather than the receiver being able to know where the target was and give thanks to you, they basically have to give thanks to the universe, to nature, to humanity, to God, to whatever you'd want to say, because they don't know. It could be
Anything
anyone.
but yourself.
Which
Yeah.
of these wonderful people blessed my life today? And that's actually the best way you can give. But even then, if you were that Santa Asbestos Head person doing that, ding dong dashing and running off, you can't tell me that's not one of the greatest feelings, knowing that you just did the supposedly most selfless thing possible, but you still get the selfish joy. and
Yeah.
and it's almost better that way. So it's like the more you can outsource your selfishness onto other people, and so that you're getting the selfless joy of giving to them, it's the ultimate. And so that's why do good, have fun.
Mhm.
Both, it's two aspects of the coin, as in help others and help yourself. Help them have fun, and you're going to have fun yourself. Do good for them, you're going to have do good yourself. You're going to have good things come to yourself.
It
um,
reminds me of that saying, kill them with kindness.
mm,
Because I've always gotten that kind of thing too, where anybody could come super, super mad at me, and I just like, and it destroys them. They can't stand how patient I am. They eventually just they go away because it's just like, I can't even get to this guy, because you start to realize that they're just putting up this front. They're just a lot of people is just insecurity. They're rude because they're scared.
mm.
They're absolutely terrified. And I'm like, I get that, man. This is a weird world. However, at the same time, there's absolutely nothing to fear.
I like what you said about the killing them with kindness idea, and how that's the best way. If you find yourself in debates, or if you find your friend starting to character assassinate you rather than talk about the subject at hand, um, rather than go down to their level, if you can help it, just kill them with kindness, like you said, is always the best way. And try to not debate, and not get into back and forths about these kind of things. Let them spout out if they need to say all their globe earth rhetoric. Let them get it out. It's like steam out of a kettle. They need to spout it before they can simmer down and and start listening. So
And
sometimes
they destroy themselves, right? They start going, well, you can see the curve. Well, you can't see the curve, and it's like, rewind the tape. We record this 24/7 actually. 1 second, and we actually have these guys that are really good at clip cording stuff, and in minutes they'll play that clip. So
being a facilitator to someone's awakening doesn't necessarily mean that you're talking the whole time. You
right.
find, it's like therapy. You find that if the therapist was talking the whole time at the subject, thinking that that's going to change them, it's not really what works. It's the opposite. The therapist is there mostly as a sounding board, so that the person doing the therapy actually has, for the first time in their life, maybe somebody who is truly listening and with an eye towards helping them, with an ear towards helping them, rather than just, when is this guy going to shut up? Why is he talking about his problems again?
Right.
Because that's not helpful. That's not actually the kind way to deal with someone like that. If you have the time and the energy, or especially if that's your job, then we found that what these people most need is a friend that will really listen to them, and then once in a while give them a little nudge or offer them a little bit of advice or some exercises that they can practice on their own to try out. Ultimately, the therapy is truly the person themselves doing all the internal work, and the best therapists barely do anything at all. And with
That's so true. They're like, thank you, doctor. And they're like,
I mean, it's true. It really
yeah,
is. And I had this example I wanted to share. I was driving down the road with my girlfriend at the time, and this big truck, passes us. The lanes are merging down, and we were ahead of them. But to get ahead of us, when it merges down to the one lane, they kind of veered right off and did like, and then pulled right back in front of us. And then we're like, whoa, that was strange. And we were kind of laughing it off. We had the windows up, and and then right after she got in front of us, she slowed right down. And then we're like, what is this? Got right in front of us for no reason. Now she's slowing down. And then so we just started putting peace sign out the window, like, well, whatever. Like, we were purposely trying to transform the moment from, because usually when something like that happens, it could be a road rage incident. And so that in ourselves, we were trying to do that, and probably doing the peace sign wasn't the best idea, because what happens next? As we're doing that out the window, she jams on the brakes and stops the truck right in the middle of the road where we are, and gets out of her big truck. And it's this, like, woman about we're early 20s, so is she, and she starts in the middle of the road screaming at us, what the fuck, what are you doing? And then she comes over and she's like, you think you're funny with your peace signs? What the fuck is that? What are you doing? What are you trying to say? And I'm just like laughing, and my windows rolled down a little bit, and I was just kind of like shocked and like looking at her. She's so aggressive, and like, it just was not what I was expecting to happen. And we're still in this space of like laughing at what's happening. And as she's getting out of the car, we're like, oh my God. And we're still laughing and smiling. And then she's right in my window, and I'm still like this, like listening to her.
yeah.
And then I still didn't respond, but I've got kind of that look on my face, and I'm just looking at her as she's yelling at me. Oh, and then my girlfriend's looking at her, and she sticks her head kind of in the window, and she's, do you want me to beat up your fucking girlfriend? And I just, again, I didn't say anything.
What?
I just kind of moved back, and I think I said so. I was like, what? Like that. And then she pulls her head back, and she's looking at me, and you can see it in her eyes, just this frustration that I'm not getting mad. I mean, really not. I was having a really good day. I'm with my girlfriend. We're having fun. And this weird thing happens, and to me, it's still funny. The whole thing is hilarious. To the point that what happens next? She spits in my face. She just goes, and I got spit down my face, and I'm just, you just spit in my face. And I start laughing at her with saliva running down my face. And this woman just looks at me. Her eyes just blaze rage. And she does this motion like a child's tantrum.
Yeah.
She stomps a foot and goes back to her truck and speeds off while I'm just sitting there looking at my girlfriend with the spit in my face, laughing. Like,
What the fuck
just
was
happened?
that?
What was that? And that was, that was 20 years ago probably, and it's now a story that I can tell. And I don't know if if that happened again, that I would be so.
But imagine how much worse it would have been, though, if you were like, "All right, let's step out," just start, start
Exactly. If
going
it was
at
a
it.
man, if it wasn't
Yeah.
a 20-something woman, I probably wouldn't have. I would have been a bit more
Right.
scared for myself and for my girlfriend, and I probably would have
Pulls out
situated
a
myself
bat. Yeah,
differently.
it's kind of like, oh, pull
But then
back.
it probably would have been worse, which is what I'm trying to say, is that if I had responded in any other way, I probably would have made it worse. And even if it was a man or something trying to initiate physical harm, being the de-escalator in the situation is always the position to be in. The other person escalating it, no matter what it is, especially from a legal self-defense standpoint, you do not want to be the aggressor at any point in the interaction. And from this kind of standpoint, where we're talking about killing people with kindness, I mean, that temper tantrum, that childish temper tantrum that she threw after I just laughed at being spat in the face, was, the best result I could possibly have gotten from that interaction. And what did I do? Absolutely nothing. I mean, it felt like nothing. The laughter came naturally.
Yeah.
The smiling, everything was just part of the situation at hand and my demeanor in it. And I felt to this day that it's a proud story, that I felt like I did the right thing. I felt like I responded in the right way. But it's, who would really be spit in the face and be able to laugh at it? And like I say, even me,
Yeah.
I don't know that I would be able to do that every time. It's
Yeah.
just that time, that's what happened, and I did it, and I'm proud, and it worked out well. And I have this story where I can see now that the idea of killing with kindness, the idea of trying to remain unfazed in your well-being, regardless of how much someone else is trying to tear you down, is true power.
Yeah.
You might think it's some kind of like I wasn't stepping into my power because I didn't spit her back at her or get upset like I deserve to be upset or something. I don't feel anything like that about that moment. I felt like it was an opportunity to not be that way, and I succeeded, and I'm proud of it. And so I think that um, I can take, maybe hopefully people listening can take some kind of um, takeaway from that. It's very Taoist in the
Yeah.
sense that we always think that we have to do something. There's some action, there's something we have to say to resolve situations. But situations come of their own accord. Like this woman, apparently she wanted to cut me off for no reason, and then she wanted to yell at me and then spit at me. I didn't want to do any of that. I didn't want to
She
have
had a
the
bad day.
interaction.
She knew who she's taking out on. Yeah.
Yeah, and we all have bad days too. She might have been in other situations, not nearly as reprehensible or whatever, and recognize that, rather than in a road rage incident, some people end their lives over things like this.
Yeah.
If it was another
Or
guy and he gets out, and then your ego gets damaged, and then you get out of the car, and then you knock him down, and then he gets up and pulls out a knife because he's not going to lose this fight, and then suddenly something that was not, somebody cut you off. So
oh, you
what?
should have saw me during the 2020 thing, because the first week I was still going to the store without any face diaper, and man, some people wanted to throw hands. They were like,
Oh man.
"You're a Trump supporter, aren't you?" Yada. And I was like, "Cause I'm buying fruit like without a face diaper." Like,
Because I'm breathing.
yeah. I mean, it was great, but it was also, I took it as an opportunity to go, gotcha. Like I get to explain all of this stuff, and even at the school, I was almost terminated because all the professors, you don't care about your community. Yeah, this is a community college. What are you doing? And I sat there and go, if you guys have 20 minutes, I have a presentation for you that I'd like to show you about face diapers, right? And oxygen and breathing and what our bodies naturally do. Three of them got up and left in the first 5 seconds. They, I was like, see ya. Thank you guys for staying, and just keep them with the kindness, because there was another thing. Nobody saw each other smile. So there was this real depression, I would say, for a lot of people that year. They didn't know what was going on. It makes me wonder if whether it might just be the human construct that's sort of dividing us, or maybe even something more nefarious. Just because we've talked about controlled opposition, and I kind of wanted to hear maybe your opinion on that too. It was actually one of the Discord questions, basically saying, do you feel that the flat Earth movement is possibly being used for this new world order sort of synergy? For instance, that for instance they could come out and go, look guys, we lied to you, the Earth is flat. That sort of gets everybody together. Boom, new world order, which is kind of my dad's thing also. He's like, how do you know the flat Earth isn't just being used for the new world order? I was like, because there's a lot of opposition, but I don't know. I'll ask Eric. He's kind of the guy.
Well, I mean, from my personal subjective standpoint, like I said, I was just curious about this subject and started reading about it and finding out about it until I figured out that it's real. And then I started making a big noise about it on the internet to the point that now it's become a worldwide phenomenon. But so to ask me, like, do you think the elites planned flat Earth to bring us all together into a new world order? No, I figured it out sitting in my bed reading books. I mean, it has nothing to do with the New World Order, unless people want to say that I'm a 5-star general in Thailand. I live on a military base, and my wife is his daughter, and all this stuff that they make
He
up.
got
This
$200,000.
Yes, from a vaccine injury settlement to become the CIA paid spokesperson for the flat Earth. So if you think that about me while I'm here in my parents' basement, with like,
Right.
yeah, that's me. I'm
You
that
got me,
guy.
guys.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
got me. I'm doing this for the money, clearly. Like,
Right.
no, I mean that's not me. But what I would say is that yeah, there's been clear controlled opposition come into the movement since then, and could they, on the movement's eventual success, co-opt it and then use the unification as some kind of justification for a new world order and have Mark Sargent be the king of the world because he figured out flat Earth and brought it to everybody. If that
They
was the case,
clues.
then yeah, with the
Oh, he can't be
new
a shill.
world
He shares
clues.
his number and his address.
Yeah, he's so personable. I mean, if that happened, then yeah, I'd definitely be like, okay, this is definitely a plan. But it would have been a co-option, not a plan from the get-go. Because when I started this, nobody was doing this. Nobody was talking about this.
Exactly.
So there's no
Exactly.
way that this was a original plan. That the original New World Order plan was to externalize the truth of the flat Earth through Eric Dubay, and then we'll get a new world. No, that's not it. But
And to
what
me, it
may
always sounded ridiculous, but I was like, well, I'll ask him.
I mean, on that version of it is definitely not the case. But what I'm saying could be is they could piggyback onto what we're creating here with their own controlled opposition movement,
Right.
and then have the success of both movements fuel their next thing that they spring off to, which could very well be like that. Well, we need a world government of flat earthers or whatever. We need to take over the UN as flat earth. Sounds pretty
Right.
far-fetched, but if that happened, then I would be sounding the alarm bells. I would be the
Yeah.
first one out there saying like, no, this is not the real flat earth movement. Like, because as you know, hand in hand with flat earth for me has always been smaller or no government. I'm not
Right.
into this world government thing or big government solutions to anything. I want, individual solutions for things, freedom, the ability to solve things for ourselves rather than have somebody on high dictate down to everyone how we all have to do things as a world society. No, let's get back to small geographical locations and everyone can do what they deem fit for their area rather than have somebody in the UN deciding for the entire world. That's never going to work out well.
Right. No, I mean, I completely agree. Just because, like I said, people kind of come at this at different times. And when I was first, doing Flat Earth and realizing you're the first video I saw, right? There wasn't this like some other guy debunking, they're like, I didn't even hear the word debunk yet until like, 2017. But because my dad is just kind of this, he's pretty skeptical too, so he's always kind of bringing this up. Well, you don't know, Chris, but I go, well, Eric is really consistent though, which is always what I've really appreciated about your work too. You're not sort of flipping, flopping, going back and forth between things. It's just consistency, right? Talking about the truth and nothing but the truth. Even the wild speculations that come out with more lands, I have no idea where people are getting these maps. Like,
Yeah, they're coming out of the ether.
I'm like, because I'm a designer, and I'm like, I know this had to be designed. Like, come on, like, who did it? Let me know, because it looks like it was made in paint. Um, that stuff I try and tell my dad that could be kind of controlled, because I do think the end game, at least according to Warner von Braun and his secretary, for however true that is, that their final card is this alien new world order, right? In my opinion, I think it's this Ronald Reagan thing. Oh, I wonder what would unify us the most if we all had a common enemy. It's always this common enemy, whether it's invisible or an actual thing. But to me, I'm like, that seems like a better play for them than trying to swing up flat Earth, and because otherwise they wouldn't put so much money, they wouldn't put so much resource, they wouldn't put all this stuff to like discredit us and laugh at us. And I don't have a lot more to say. I mean, we've already kind of went over, the questions and things like that. And honestly, I feel like I could talk to you all day. But I guess I had one more thing that maybe we haven't covered. Um, the aliens are coming, right? It's supposedly what they're saying. How or if do you think this alien invasion is going to happen? Do you think it'll play out? Maybe your thoughts and speculations.
So I agree with what you said about the Ronald Reagan speech where he's talking about the off-world enemy to unite humanity. Again, they're always looking for that. And the CV thing that just happened for 3 years, that is the invisible worldwide enemy that everyone needs to be scared about. And now we can't even, you can't hug your grandma, and you got to wear a muzzle, and you got to stand 6 feet apart from each other. You can't talk because the saliva is going to spew out on other people and kill them, apparently. So, wow. I mean,
6 feet, guys.
Yeah, 6, of course. Of course, 6 feet, not 5, not 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that. They're so good at creating worldwide enemies. Well, the meteor, Werner von Braun said, would be the other one, which they're constantly, scaremongering about, that there's this or that asteroid that's coming so close and it's going to impact us and it's going to be a world killer and all this. And you got your world wars, was the 20th century version of the worldwide enemy. And I think,
letters.
Yeah. Well, the 21st century version is probably going to be the off-world space enemy. And that's why we've got the Space Force forming, and we've got these news stories happening more and more. Have you been seeing them about the government's coming out?
Just because the Discord is like, it's
whistleblowers.
Gonna happen, guys.
Yeah, they're all coming out claiming that they saw, they were biological entities. Were they aliens? They were non-human biological entities. You see, they're doing these. They seem like scripted congressional hearings or whatever with supposed whistleblowers coming out with the fact that yes, they've recovered alien bodies from unidentified flying objects. And I mean, right from the first one, the Roswell one, it already seemed like a controlled opposition thing to me, where they give you the news on the first day and like, aliens landed, bodies recovered. And then the next day they say, false alarm, it was just a weather balloon and there's nothing to see here. But that's just the Hegelian dialectic. The person what happens is you've got the thesis and the antithesis, and you get the synthesis result, which means the first thing is aliens have landed, and everybody thinks that that's somebody's blowing the whistle. That's the real scoop. And then the next day, they're covering it up. They're trying to say like, no, it was just a weather balloon. Nothing happened. And so the synthesis result in the person reading the newspaper at that time is, aliens are real, and they did land, and the government's covering it up. And now here we are about 90 years later, and it's exactly the same narrative, aliens have landed and the government's covering it up, but there's a few good people in government who are coming out and blowing the whistle. And that's how the controlled opposition always works. They always come out as the whistleblowers. They've got the special information, the inside source, so they have to be the authority figure. And now we have to listen to their authority. That's the good thing about me is I'm just some random dude. You can call me a flat Earth authority, but I'm really nobody. I'm not. I don't have any standing like that. But these
Same.
people,
Same.
right? That is actually, in this day and age, a good position to be in.
It really is.
People try to weave these webs of conspiracy, like I said, about me living on a military base, and I'm a rich, what am I, a Monaco royalty? I'm like,
Something
you heard
like
that one?
Yeah.
I'm the prince. It's a prince. I'm the prince of Monaco apparently, and so I'm just flying all over the world on private jets and all this stuff, and I'm only here to delude the world with flat Earth. So you got these narratives being played on you. And when you're not that way, clearly, then it really exposes the people trying to say these things.